Walters is your spot for every football game the rest of the way, whether it's the newly expanded college football playoff or the NFL postseason. Walters has over 30 TVs, both inside and outside, located across the street from Nationals Park.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
3-2 the pitch. Swung on, belted deep center field. Back goes Trout, way back. Warning track, ball, looking up and gone goodbye. In and out of the rock pile and bouncing back down onto the playing field. Bang! Zoom goes Josh Bell with his 4th home run of the year.
Next pitch. Swinging a ground ball towards short, off the glove of Abrams, deflects out into center field. Simeon will score, and Lowe is aboard at first, and it's 4-1 Texas.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Monday, January 6, 2025, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Good to be back with you. I'd say Happy New Year, but we're past the point at which Larry David says it's okay to say Happy New Year. So we'll just say hello and hope that you had a nice holiday season. But we are here. We have actual significant Nationals moves in this offseason to discuss. We also have lingering Nats questions to discuss. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com. As we are recording this, the Washington, D.C. area has been bludgeoned by snow. Mark, are you surviving the snow so far?
I'm surviving so far, Al, but we're taping this a little earlier in the day, so I have not had to go out yet and actually start shoveling this. Growing up in Arizona, we didn't have snow days, so it's still kind of cool to me. But I will admit, the older I get, the less excited I get about the 6 to 8 to 10 inches, because I realize just how much work that actually is. My son loves it, a little less so for me as a responsible adult.
Well, and as we know in this area, a heavy dosage of snow means no school, no nothing for multiple days. It's not just a one-day scenario here. So I think we're all sort of bracing for another shortened week. So such is life, but good to be with you here. And like I said, we have Nats moves to get into, but I think before we get into the particular moves, there is the overarching question of, what is Mike Rizzo allowed to do this offseason? What exactly is this Nats offseason? The 4 moves of consequence since we last did this installment of the podcast. So 2 starting pitching moves. The Nats have re-signed Trevor Williams, 2 years, $14 million. The Nats have signed free agent pitcher Michael Soroka, 1 year, $9 million. The Nats have signed free agent first baseman Josh Bell. Yes, he is back, 1 year, $6 million. And the Nats have traded lefty reliever Robert Garcia to the Texas Rangers for first baseman Nathaniel Lowe. So there are things to like about those moves. There are things to question about those moves. But from the perspective of payroll and from the perspective of, okay, the offseason isn't done and there are still some prominent free agents out there, but the offseason is happening. And we're less than 2 months away now from the start of spring training. Is this the Nats offseason, essentially? Like, is this what we're talking about when we talk about the Nationals 2024-2025 offseason?
I hope that it's not. I hope there is still more to come, and I do believe there is more to come. Now, how significant is what's still out there? I don't know. We're going to have to still see about that. Obviously, they have not to this point made the big splash, the big move, the long-term deal for a lot of money that we haven't seen them make in several years, that we're all kind of wondering, is this the offseason that they finally dive back into that market? Now, I do sense that they were interested in and pursued at least a few players who may have fallen into that category, especially at first base. I know we talked about Christian Walker a few times late in the season and into the offseason. Obviously, he wound up in Houston. It was a 3-year, $60 million deal. Kind of modest in my mind. I felt like that was maybe the low bar for what he might cost. And I figured the Nats, if that's what it would be, should certainly be willing to delve into that. I don't know to what extent they did make him an offer or if they matched that or came up short or even went above it. I think the thing to remember here, I think it applies to any prominent free agent, it's a two-way street. You can offer as much as you want, but that player has to want to come here. Christian Walker was in high demand, and I think ultimately chose where he wanted to go. The Nationals used to be a destination. It's not that way anymore. They're going to have to kind of reestablish themselves as that kind of place. So yes, there's a money factor there too, but it's also about where do you want to play. And I wouldn't be surprised in this case if it was just a matter of a guy who was in high demand picking the place that he wanted to go. Now, there's still other things out there that could happen. Alex Bregman would be very interesting. I don't know for sure they're going there, but the name has kind of been thrown out. It's a possibility. I think rotation-wise, they're probably set right now, given what moves they have made. We'll still have to see. I think there are bullpen moves to be made. That's going to cost money. So I think the moves they've made have been calculated. They fill specific needs, but obviously not a big splash, 3, 4, 5-year deal like maybe we thought they might make.
The fact that the power bat need so far has been addressed by multiple acquisitions, Lowe and Bell, that does not mean that they are done necessarily pursuing a power bat. Do you read it that way?
Well, I think there's only one position left they really could pursue, and that would be third base. It's my guess. You have a first baseman now, you have a DH. You got a second baseman, shortstop returning, and we're pretty sure they got an outfield returning, although in theory, they could go get another outfielder, and Jacob Young, despite his Gold Glove caliber defense, may not be considered enough offensively. I'd be surprised by that. So I think third base is the one spot where maybe they could do something along those lines. So that's the one I'm watching for now. In Lowe and Bell, they have increased the team's power production, yes. Maybe not with that bona fide 40-homer guy like a Pete Alonso would have been, or even a Christian Walker who's kind of consistently 30 plus. So they didn't necessarily go that way. But I think in both cases, that's clear offensive upgrade. Lowe, great on-base percentage, can hit 20-plus homers. Bell, we know, gets very streaky, but when he gets hot, and it can be for 3 months at a time, big-time production there. So that's better than what they had at those spots. But if there's one spot left, I would look at third base as a potential to add some more power.
So regarding Lowe and Bell, I think they're two very different profiles. So I think the trade for Lowe is a borderline steal. I mean, we'll see what he does here, but Mike Rizzo takes a reliever in Robert Garcia, who the Nats got via waivers a few years back, and turns him into Nathaniel Lowe. Lowe is going into his age 29 season, under team control through the 2026 season. He, over his 4 seasons with the Texas Rangers, 2021 through 2024, was mostly durable and was mostly good. And if you just go by wins above replacement per Baseball Reference, you look at those 4 regular seasons, he had a BWAR of at least 2.3 and OPS plus of at least 112. He was remarkably consistent. To get that guy for a reliever in Garcia, who, has some strikeout stuff, but I mean, there's a lot unproven there. That seems like a terrific trade. So I've got nothing but nice things to say about that. I think the Bell thing is another conversation. So I think the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people is, oh, Josh Bell is back. He was really good when he was here, and he was. Josh Bell with the Nats for 1+ seasons, very productive. But if you look at what has happened with Bell since the Nats traded him in the Juan Soto trade to the San Diego Padres, August 2022, things have not gone well. In fact, if you go by Baseball Reference's WAR, Josh Bell has been a below replacement level player since the Nats traded him. And he has bounced around. He has played for the Padres, Cleveland, Miami, and Arizona, and now is back with the Nats. So his career has not gone well since the Nats traded him. Now, I suppose you could say, hey, now that he's back with the Nats, he can be back to being good again. But it's I think, almost alarming how poorly he has done since the Nats traded him. He's going into his age 32 season. Like you said, he is very streaky. So if he gets hot, he can certainly be really good. But I think just assuming that, like, okay, Josh Bell helps you, I'm not certain of that. I think it's possible, but I think this is along the lines of like a Joey Gallo acquisition, a Nelson Cruz acquisition. It could work out, but there's a realistic scenario by which it doesn't work out.
Well, consider what they're paying him, $6 million for 1 year. That's not the kind of money you give a proven, bona fide, guaranteed power hitter. Remember, they gave $5 million to Joey Gallo last year. So it's kind of in that same realm. You have a track record, but it hasn't been as good recently. We're hoping for a bounce back. But if it doesn't work out, it's not this gigantic financial commitment that we've made to you. So yeah, it does fall into that category. The thing with Bell, and this really even applies to his time in DC, the streakiness is remarkable with him in both good and bad ways. And pretty much each of the last 4 seasons, he's had one great half of a season and one terrible half of a season. Probably 2022, when they made the trade, was the longest that he had sustained. It was really a good 4 months before the trade, and then he did not do well in San Diego. But look at the last couple of years, bad at times, but then also half a season really good. And it happened last year after he was traded to the Diamondbacks, was a much more productive hitter again. So I think you have to know that going in, what you're getting with him. And it's why I am interested to see what they do around him. Is he the full-time everyday DH, or is he part of a platoon situation? Let's remember they have Juan Yepez and Andres Chaparro. Clearly not big-time proven big league hitters, but both did well against lefties last season, and Yepez in more of a sample that we saw of that. Now, Josh Bell, lefty-righty splits are not that dramatic recently. Back in the day, it was more of a thing, not as much recently. But would they maybe look at Yepez as a right-handed complement to Bell in the DH spot? Or would they even go look at somebody else out there to share that role? Maybe, like I said, there's a third baseman who could also DH. Do we want to get into a situation where they're confined with one guy DHing every day? We've seen that in the past. Can sometimes be a problem. You're hamstrung from somebody who doesn't play the field and doesn't give you that versatility to bring another guy who maybe James Wood needs a day off his legs, but he can still bat and be a DH. So I am interested to see how that one all plays out. I do like the Nathaniel Lowe acquisition as well. I think the key there is you're getting 2 years of control of him. He's still only 29. He's won a Gold Glove. He's won a Silver Slugger. He's won a World Series. He reminds me, he's not as big a name, but I went back and looked at this. It's kind of similar to Adam LaRoche back in the day when the Nats got him, a little bit younger than LaRoche was at the time. I've been saying for months, I think they need their next version of Adam LaRoche. Well, this might be it. It would be great if it works out that way, and even better if he's good enough that they want to re-sign him beyond those 2 years. So I like that move, and I'm glad that they got a guy at first base who plays a good defensive first base for them. We know how important that is. Gets on base at a really high rate, and hopefully the power is added to that too. In Bell's case, you got to know what you're getting as far as the streakiness goes, and you got to have a plan B if he does go into one of those slumps.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to put some numbers behind what I said about Bell with the Nats, 247 regular season games, B-WAR a 6.4. That's terrific. Bell, since his time with the Nats, 348 regular season games, B-WAR of minus 0.6. Josh Bell, in his latter days with the Nats, did play some left field. He really has not done that since he was with the Nats. Do you think there's any possibility we see him back in the outfield at some point this season, or do you think that those days are done?
I think at this point, they're acknowledging that he's here for his bat, and that is going to be as a DH. Now, maybe he plays first base some when Lowe needs some days off, but I think outside of an emergency, you're not going to see him playing a corner outfield position over Dylan Cruz or James Wood. I don't think that serves anybody's purpose unless you absolutely have to do it.
Hey, Al Galdi here to tell you about the latest great offer from Window Nation for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. Now is a great time to replace your old inefficient windows with energy efficient windows from Window Nation. Get a free, no obligation quote now. 866-90Nation or windownation.com. Window Nation is the best. Window Nation can install your new windows in a day or less, and Window Nation's windows come with a lifetime warranty. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder that thousands of homeowners have trusted Window Nation for years. And take advantage of the great offer for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast, plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years. 866-90Nation or windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation or windownation.com. And tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast.
This podcast is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. They make it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms. Launching a website is so easy with Squarespace, plus they equip you with the tools you need to succeed. They have design intelligence, which means you don't have to actually be a creative genius to launch a beautiful, personalized website. Just let Squarespace's 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise and cutting-edge AI technology do the work. Every Squarespace website has integrated SEO tools, which help you show up more often to more people in global search engines. And if you're selling things, Squarespace Payments let you manage your payments all in one place. Onboarding is fast and simple, and you can start receiving payments right away. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/bluewire to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain.
A strong host game needs a strong wing game, like Popeye's 8 bold, crispy Louisiana wing flavors. At $5.99 for a 6-piece, satisfy everyone's taste buds at your next watch party.
Have that chicken from Popeyes.
At participating U.S. restaurants, price may vary, tax extra.
Here's Evan Carter, swings and pops the first pitch up. Behind second, shallow center, Abrams under it, he makes the catch for the out. Another Houdiniac for Trevor Williams, and walks across the rope to the other side with his hands tied behind his back. And he gets out of a bases-loaded no-out jam for the second time in 5 innings.
So you look at what the Nats have done from a starting pitching standpoint since we last spoke on this podcast. The Nats have signed Michael Soroka. The Nats have re-signed Trevor Williams. So Michael Soroka, a name you're likely familiar with, 1 year, $9 million contract going into his age 27 season. Spent this past season with the Major League worst Chicago White Sox. He, for them, served as both a starter and a reliever. 25 total games, including 9 starts this past regular season. 79 2/3 innings, ERA of 4.74, WHIP of 138, strikeouts per 9 innings of 9.49. He actually did quite well as a reliever, although the way that the Nats acquiring him is being framed is that he is going to be given the opportunity to be a starter. And Michael Soroka at one time was a high-level starter, was taken by the Atlanta Braves with the number 28 overall pick in the 2015 MLB draft out of a high school in Calgary. Spent his first 6 major league seasons with the Braves. He, for the Braves in the 2019 regular season, was excellent. 6.1 wins above replacement per Baseball Reference, but he did not pitch in a single major league game in the 2021 and 2022 regular seasons due to twice tearing his right Achilles tendon. Imagine that. First time in August 2020, second time in June 2021. With Trevor Williams, we know the deal with him. Really bad first season with the Nats, terrific second season with the Nats, albeit injury-plagued. The Nats re-signed him to a 2-year, $14 million contract. He's going into his age 33 season. Soroka and Williams, do you expect them to both be in the Nats 2025 opening day rotation?
So I would not have necessarily thought that going in. And when they signed Soroka, initially, one of my first thought was, oh, well, there's Trevor Williams' replacement. And then a couple weeks later, no, wait, they're bringing Trevor Williams back as well. Okay, how's that exactly going to work out? Now, do the math. You've got Mackenzie Gore and Jake Irvin are guaranteed of rotation spots. I think that's safe to say. If you put both Soroka and Williams in there, that leaves one remaining spot for one of your 2 young lefties, DJ Herz and Mitchell Parker. I know they were both in the rotation for a good chunk last season. They also both have options. They're both still pretty unproven with some flaws and some things you'd like to work out. Herz seemed to have the higher upside. His better starts were really good. Parker maybe a little bit more consistent, but not as high of a ceiling as him. And we know there were some issues, especially with fielding. So my guess is that right now you're going to see both Soroka and Williams in the rotation. And then either Herz or Parker starts the year at AAA and they're on call waiting to be moved up. I think the question is going to be, how long is the leash with Williams and Soroka? Are you willing to move either of them to the bullpen? You mentioned Soroka, when the White Sox moved him to the bullpen, was way more effective. Now, is that because he's better suited to be a reliever, or is there something else going on? In his call with us, he was insisting it had less to do with the move and more to do with some mechanical changes that he made and some changes to his pitch usage and selection. He stopped throwing his sinker, went more with the four-seam fastball. Really emphasized his slider, which was a wipeout pitch for him all of a sudden. When he went to the bullpen, it was like a 35% strikeout rate with the slider. So he believes he can translate that back into a starting role. But as we saw last year, he's still looking at 4 or 5 innings, not a lot more than that. I don't know if they want to push him more than that. We know Trevor Williams last year was very effective when used for 5 innings, 80 pitches. They didn't push him beyond that. So can you get that kind of production again out of him? And the same thing from Soroka. But if you do that, you've now got 2 out of 5 starters that you're basically saying, just give us 5 good innings and we'll go to the bullpen. That puts a lot of added stress on a bullpen, which we haven't gotten to yet, but doesn't exactly have a lot of names that you're going to recognize with any kind of established track record. So I think they start the year with both guys. But I do think it's interesting that they have had success, both of them as relievers / swingmen. Would that ultimately be a better path to at least have one of them there, maybe to piggyback the previous one so that you can get 7, 8 innings out of the 2 of them on a given night?
I don't want to make it sound like DJ Herz deserves a spot in the Nats rotation in perpetuity, but I thought he did a pretty good job last season, especially after he was demoted to AAA Rochester for what was essentially a break. Why isn't it Gore, Irvin, and Herz as 3 definites for the rotation? Like, did Herz not do enough to warrant being in the Nats opening day rotation for this coming season?
What I would say with him is Gore and Irvin had already a big league season prior to that and now had a full big league season in 2024. Herz just came up, 19 starts that he made for them. There were a lot of really good starts and there's a lot to like there, yes, but less proven. And as far as that innings workload, I think that's something that they're still going to be monitoring. He has not been through a full big league season before. And we've seen in the past, they'll sometimes say, okay, we're going to start you out at AAA, keep your innings low, save you up so that we can get you through the season. It could be that kind of scenario with him. I would put him a leg up over Parker myself. I know Parker made more starts, but I think it's pretty clear that Herz has the ability to be better than Parker as a number 3, or maybe even better. I mean, his dominant starts were really dominant. So I think I'd put him there, but I don't think he's in the Gore-Irvin category yet. I think a year from now, if he gets through and makes 30 big league starts, now he's shown he can do that, then I put him in that category with those 2 guys.
There is a name that has not come up in our conversation about the Nats 2025 opening day rotation, and that is Cade Cavalli, who still has only made 1 major league regular season appearance. August 26, 2022, 7 runs in 4 1/3 innings in a 7-3 Nats loss to the Cincinnati Reds. He since then has been plagued by injury, including in March 2023, undergoing Tommy John surgery. We are going into being 5 full years removed from the Nats taking Cavalli with the number 22 overall pick in the 2020 MLB draft out of the University of Oklahoma. It does seem like, assuming he's healthy, he's not starting the regular season at the major league level. Do you think it's safe to say that?
I think probably just because he needs to pitch. You just outlined that, how little he has pitched in the last several years. He needs to get on a 5-day routine. He needs to show that he can stay healthy, and he needs to show that he can have some success. And I don't think they want to do that to him at the big league level, not with the other options that they have. Now, I think it's very much in the team's plan for Cade Cavalli to be in the Nats rotation sometime as the season plays out. And ideally, once he gets there, he takes off, and now he does bump somebody else to a bullpen role or to AAA. But I don't think they're prepared just to throw him in there because of the fact that he was a first-round pick, because they were so high on him a few years ago. He's got to go pitch and show that he can actually do it every 5th day, because it's been quite a while since he's done that.
It has been. And obviously, that would be such a positive development for this coming season. Cavalli asserting himself as a major league pitcher, but we are not there yet. We have not been there for quite some time in terms of like really feeling optimism on that. So we'll see. I mean, he's still a super talented guy, but man, him not making any appearances at the major league level last season really was one of the disappointments of last season, because at least you could be going into this season with a semblance of an idea of where he's at. Instead, it's a giant mystery. Like, all you have is that one start now multiple seasons ago. And of course, that at this point doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah, no, it doesn't count for anything at this point. And, you know, they can spin it however they want. And I'm willing to believe that by the end of the year, he was healthy. But clearly, as they went through that process last year where they were trying to build him up, the idea was that he was going to be in the big league rotation in June or July and then let him go for most of the season. And he never got to that point, because there were physical issues that they decided to keep shutting him down. That is concerning to me. And that's why he's got to go out now and prove that he can just do that at any level, let alone at the big league level. And I think they're in a position now where they can say, show it to us in AAA before we put it in the big leagues. Yeah, we want it to be in the big leagues, but you got to earn your way back to that point now, both health-wise and performance-wise. It's not just a matter of starting every fifth day. There's going to have to be some level of success with that as well.
So you mentioned the bullpen. It's remarkable. Since the middle of last season, all of the departures in terms of Nats relievers, and not a whole lot in the way of acquisitions, not a whole lot in the way of arrivals. I mean, just this offseason, right? Kyle Finnegan non-tendered, Tanner Rainey non-tendered, Robert Garcia traded away. Of course, during last season, the Nats traded multiple relievers, including Hunter Harvey. What is this bullpen going to look like right now? It's becoming more and more of a mystery. And as we just discussed with Trevor Williams and Michael Soroka, if each guy, at least initially, is a starter, right there are two fewer options for that Nats bullpen.
Yeah, we're recording this on the morning of January 6th, and you've got almost 3 months still until opening day, a little less than 3 months. I'm going to make a prediction here on January 6th and say that at least 4 members of the Nationals opening day bullpen are not currently in the organization. That's how many moves they still have to make, and that's how many moves I think they will make. Right now, there's only 2 names on the 40-man roster that I'm looking at and saying, yeah, that guy's definitely a part of it. It's Derek Law, who was the workhorse from last year, and it's Jose A. Ferrer, who is promising and's got a great arm as a lefty, but he doesn't have a whole lot of track record himself either. But with Robert Garcia gone, he's kind of stepping up now as the top lefty, and you even heard speculation that they could groom him to be a closer. I don't think that's what we're looking at come opening day. This, to me, is the number one task of the rest of the offseason, and it may even extend into spring training. Go get yourself some really established big league relievers. Now, they've done this in the past. We saw last year, Law was signed in spring training. Jacob Barnes was signed in spring training. They made some other moves on minor league deals that maybe they worked out or they didn't. I think that's a slower moving market and will take some time. To me, the real key question here is, and we discussed this after they made the Finnegan move, they decided Finnegan wasn't worth the $8-9 million that he was going to get through arbitration. Do they spend a comparable amount or maybe even more on another guy with closing experience in the big leagues? That to me is a telltale sign of what the real motivation was there. If they do that, then Finnegan can be framed as more of a baseball decision than a financial decision. If they don't, if they go cheaper on that or less experienced, that to me is more of a red flag and more of a concern. I've got to believe that there's a lot of guys still out there. The reliever market has not taken off at all yet. I got to believe they're going to go spend some kind of decent money on somebody with actual big league closing experience.
The money is not being spent. I mean, we don't know exactly what the learners are willing to spend. But I mean, again, you look at the payroll for this coming season, Patrick Corbin off the books, Steven Strasburg retired. And I went through the money that has been allocated in terms of these acquisitions this offseason. Trevor Williams, 2 years, $14 million. Michael Soroka, 1 year, $9 million. Josh Bell, 1 year, $6 million. Nathaniel Lowe is still under team control. It's like there's money to be spent here. So, yeah, you'd like to think it's going to go somewhere. I mean, we always say this, and I think it's important to say this. Spending money doesn't mean doing well, right? Just because you make a lot of moves in an offseason, you spend a lot of money in an offseason, that doesn't mean that you've had a great offseason. But I think we also understand that it's hard to win by operating on the margins and not spending. And the Nats have not spent in a really long time, and we're still waiting on them to spend. this offseason. So you would think with the reliever, you would think with perhaps one of these power bats that do remain out there, but the offseason is happening. I mean, you and I kind of preached patience on the last installment of the podcast. It's still early enough to where things could go down, but the offseason is moving here. I mean, the season ended, late October, early November, so we're now into January, about a month and a half away from the start of spring training. So, you would think if things don't happen in the coming weeks, it is going to be fair to say that this offseason was not what a lot of us thought it would be and thought that the offseason should be.
Sure. I will say that I think what they have done this winter, I know it's modest, but I think it's a slight step up from what they've done the last couple of years. Nathaniel Lowe, under team control, but he's going to make about $10 million in arbitration and then is going to increase on that the next year. So let's look at that as like the equivalent of like a 2-year, $25 million deal, something like that. Okay. That's something. I think giving Soroka $9 million is a little bit of a step up. Going ahead and doing a 2-year deal with Trevor Williams. There's certainly a lot more that can be done and should be done. But I think the moves they've made so far have been less about just plugging in a hole for the short term, like picking up a guy that you're planning to flip at the trade deadline, as opposed to somebody that you think could actually help you win more this year. It's not enough, clearly, but I think there's a little more calculation with it in that way. And then the other thing is this, they're not alone. A ton of teams, I just saw this stat the other day, there's like 4 teams that basically have not spent any money yet this winter. And about a week ago, I looked this up. According to, this is MLB Trade Rumors, that's kind of calculated how much guaranteed salary every team has committed so far this winter, have added. The Nats are actually 15th out of 30 teams. And that's only adding, $30-something million in salaries for the upcoming season. So a lot of teams are in this position. The hope is that there's still time, that there are a lot of free agents out there, that there is more to be done. But as frustrating as that is, and believe me, I'm in that camp, like you want them to be more aggressive. They're not alone. This seems to be an industry-wide trend aside from like 5 teams at the top of the pyramid.
MLB off seasons are so odd. MLB has the shortest off season of the 4 major pro sports leagues. I mean, it's only 3.5 months when you consider middle of February through October is when the MLB preseason/season happens. And yet the off season moves at a glacier pace. It really is remarkable. Just teams do not move with any kind of urgency.
Hey Nats fans, you know me as Tim Newmark, the guy who wrote the Nats Chat theme song. You may not know that 2025 is the 10th anniversary of the release of my personal favorite album, Galaxy. Check it out on your favorite streaming platforms today.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
It's the bottom of the first inning. 29-year-old right-hander Corbin Burnes has completed his warm-up tosses. In his first year with the Orioles, the native of Bakersfield, California, makes his home in Scottsdale, Arizona, and is ready to throw his first pitch of his 8th start of the year. 3-1 record, 2.61 ERA. And Jacob Young leading off against him, hitting at .308, 6 doubles, no homers, 7 runs batted in. Burnes does not wind up. He pitches out of the stretch, and Young tries to bunt and bunted through it, strike 1.
I did want to get your take on this. So Corbin Burnes, it was always kind of a pie-in-the-sky thing that the Nats would sign Burnes, but there were those parallels between him and Max Scherzer. He ends up signing with one of Max's former teams, of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's a 6-year, $210 million contract, and it got me to thinking about a few things. So the Nats 9 years ago signed Scherzer to a 7-year, $210 million contract. Also, the AAV of the Burnes contract is $35 million, the exact same AAV to which the Nats re-signed Steven Strasburg in December 2019. So despite all of these years passing, the top free agent starting pitcher in this free agent market got money that was comparable to what Max got in January 2015, to what Strasburg got in December 2019. I don't know. I feel like there wasn't a lot of conversation about this. That felt like an underwhelming big money deal, if that makes sense, for Corbin Burnes. 6 years, $210 million. And if you were going to be in on him, this might have been the time to be in on him if he was willing to settle for that. Now, he's from out west. He lives in Arizona, so maybe an East Coast team never had a shot. But I was underwhelmed by that contract. I wonder what you thought about that.
A little bit, yeah. But you kind of heard whispers all winter about kind of treating him as not that bona fide Max Scherzer style ace. I mean, you look at the numbers, he's been really good. He's been a little more under the radar, either because he was pitching in Milwaukee and Baltimore, or for whatever reason. He is 31 already, and there's some concerns, of course, about pitchers in their 30s. I think it really just boils down to, and the Nats are high on this list of understanding the consequences of long-term deals for pitchers, and how, as great as the Scherzer deal was, that is by far the exception to the rule. In most cases, those deals do not work out. And when they don't work out, they can be spectacular failures, as the Nats found out with Steven Strasburg and to a lesser extent with Patrick Corbin. I don't think they're alone in that regard. I think other teams probably are feeling the same way. Good on the Diamondbacks for going all in on that to try to get a guy. And for a team that wasn't necessarily lacking in good starting pitching, they've now got the makings of potentially a great rotation as they try to keep up with the Dodgers in the West. But I do wonder deep down if there is a lot of buyer's remorse on South Capitol Street when it comes to free agent pitchers. They're off the books on Corbin now, yes. Strasburg, they're still paying him for a couple of years, but it's essentially done. Are they willing to go back in that market again to do that kind of deal, or are they scared off because of what happened with those two? I would not be surprised if that's the case. And again, they're not alone. I think a lot of teams might feel that way, but I think that's less of a Rizzo call than an ownership call, and being scared, not necessarily about paying money in general, but specifically paying that kind of money to starting pitchers, especially those in their 30s.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly appropriate way to look at things. I've said this before. I think if you never gave a pitcher a big money contract, you'd be right so much more often than you would be wrong. It's just that with Burnes, I don't know, maybe I was had higher expectations than I should have, but I was thinking mid $200 million, maybe even more. And instead it's 6 for 210, same AAV as Strasburg got, 5 years ago at this point. I just felt like that was not what it could have been. The other thing with the Diamondbacks is this. So in the 2021 regular season, the Arizona Diamondbacks had a major league worst tying record of 52 and 110. And that stands out because 2021, of course, is when the Nats started to fall off. And then what happened, right? 2 years later, the Diamondbacks won the National League pennant, albeit as a wild card team that just won 84 games that regular season. And now here we are, the Diamondbacks landing Corbin Burnes. I do this a lot. Maybe it's not healthy, but you compare kind of where your teams are to where other teams are. Diamondbacks and Nats in 2021, both really bad. Diamondbacks years later in a much better spot than the Nats are in. Now, we'll see what the Nats do this coming season, but, it is hard not to ask yourself, if you're a Nats fan, how come the Diamondbacks have been able to do this and the Nats haven't been? How come the Diamondbacks landed Corbin Burnes and the Nats never came up not once for Burnes? Now, again, maybe it has to do with geography, so fine. But there's a larger point here of the Diamondbacks went from really bad to really good really quickly. And if you're frustrated as a Nats fan, I understand that, because all you need to do is look around MLB and you'll see examples of turnarounds that don't take, say, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, you're right. They went to the World Series a couple years after hitting rock bottom like that. But let's remember, the core of that team and the main reason they got that far was young homegrown talent, led by Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte and some others. That's where the Nats want to be, and that's technically the approach they're taking. If this happens for them, it's going to be with young homegrown or trade-acquired young talent. That's why this is such a big year for them. It's kind of put up or shut up time in so many ways. Whatever they do as far as spending money this winter, success in 2025 really boils down to how much does that young core step up and establish itself as legitimate. It's James Wood, Dylan Cruz, CJ Abrams, Luis Garcia, Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, hopefully Cade Cavalli at some point, DJ Herz. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. is going to make or break the 2025 season for the Nats. Yes, veterans acquired can help you get over that hump, but the veterans alone are not going to turn a 71-win team into an 85-90 win team. They might turn an 81-win team into an 85-win team, but you got to make that first step through the development of your own young guys, and that's what they're really banking on this year. And if it doesn't happen, and we're talking about another losing record again, now we're having a very different conversation, I think, next winter.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast, and you can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Long run for Cowgill on the warning track in center. He looks up. It is out of here. A 3-run shot off the bat of Adam LaRoche. And the Nationals go back on top